Ciao Juventini and welcome back to the All Juvecast. We are on episode 113 and this one's going to be a lot of fun because in typical not only Juve fashion but Serie A fashion, we have some drama, some controversy and all sorts of fun. And here to cover what unfolded in this Juve Napoli supposed to be match is my man Eric, who's no stranger to the podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Enjoyed the match as much as everybody else did.
Yeah, yeah. I think the highlight was Buffon on the sideline in a nice polo, looking sharp. So, um, yeah. Where do we really start with this one? This was crazy. Seemingly out of nowhere, um, news broke out that Napoli was facing a travel ban and that the match could not take place. The story unfolds and then you have Napoli stating that the ASL would not let them travel. Then you have on Sky an interview that was transcribed basically, and then the document came out saying that it was from ANSA saying that the ASL did not issue a ban to Napoli. Then you get the document from the ASL that Napoli posts up and everyone's putting out there that shows them having to go with all these players into confinement, whatnot, and isolate. It was just an absolute mess. Throughout all of this, the league is ultimately the one that has to make the decision. The league then said the match would take place. To me, that was the biggest sign that there was more to kind of everything going on there. And that either Napoli was obviously trying to play games, and they're getting called out, or yeah, the league knew something else or whatnot. But then you also have Juve stating they will take the field. And this obviously fired up all of the rival fans and everything into this huge, huge mess. And of course, blame Juve. It's all Juve's fault. But ultimately, if the league says the match is going to take place, why would Juve put their neck out for Napoli, a rival, anything like that to that nature, face possible fines, face possible deductions for not showing up to a match in your own home? It's not up to them. They're not the power that be, right? I thought this whole thing was ridiculous, but ultimately, if the league hasn't postponed or canceled, Juve's showing up and fielding, and Napoli's been asked to go to the match because obviously there is not a travel ban. There's people traveling in and out of Napoli nonstop all the time. You also have the fact that other clubs in that region have been traveling, have faced the same circumstances, and they're still playing. And you also have, the league. Milan, I could imagine if you were a Milanista and you have your team playing without Zlatan because these are the rules and protocols, now all of a sudden Napoli's trying to go against this because they have Insigne out for injury and they lost Zielinski and Elmas to this COVID thing. You would create far bigger controversy and havoc if you did not try to play this game, in my opinion. But Eric, what's your take on this whole situation, everything that unfolded? Like, I'm curious to just hear how you feel.
I think it's difficult to find the truths versus the untruths based on some of the reports. So you kind of just have to go with what makes sense to you. Personally speaking, I think the league has a protocol for this and getting the season started, and there's standard operating procedures, and if teams don't follow the standard operating procedure, I think there's penalties for it. And more information has come out that has stated that Napoli did not follow the protocol, in which case, whether I'm a Juventus fan or I'm a Milan fan, or if I support another squad, consequences have to happen because what you just said, actually. So think if you're an AC, just a Milan fan, and your star player tested positive for COVID, and they didn't forfeit that match. They postponed it. Um, and then you have Laurinaitis kind of causing all this controversy. They forfeit the match, they lose 3 points, and then they get the appeal. I think there's going to be some issues with how people look at Napoli and their organization and why they got favored versus other squads. So personally speaking, I don't want to take 3 points this way. I think I speak for the majority of the fan base. None of us want to see us gain 3 points this way. But there are protocols in place for this exact reason, and if you don't follow them, there's consequences. So it's more of a necessity than anything else.
Yeah, I said at the start, because again, this took so many twists and turns throughout the story breaking out in such a short period of time that when the news first broke, I said, you know what, postpone the match. Because to my knowledge, they were facing a ban due to COVID and they couldn't travel. So immediately the 3-0 forfeit was brought up. And I said at that point, no, we're not going to take those points. Postpone the match. They can't get there. However, my tune did change when I started to see that may not be the scenario and that they may be trying to play games and trying to sway from the rules and regulations. In that kind of circumstance, yeah, I don't care if you're ultimately, if the league says you got to get there and these bans or whatever you're trying to do are manipulated by your president and his connection with this DeLuca gentleman who happens to be the head of this ASL or whatnot. Well, then the tune kind of changes. And then I was saying, you know what? Get your asses there because it's not fair to the other clubs that are following the protocol. And then obviously today, the match was scheduled. Everybody was there. We saw it just nothing happening. 1,000 fans sitting there for no reason. And all it said on the screen, awaiting the away team. Well, they don't show up. And Yelly has his conference and he just reiterates that they're following the rules and protocols and that they're there for a reason. And obviously, Juve, no matter what we do, it just seems like they get shit on. And you have Serie A fans, rival fans, all this just coming at them. And it's hard not to get sucked into that and just tell them to essentially shut the hell up because it's just garbage. It's just so hypocritical too, because if the shoe was on the other foot, how it would play out and how it would go down, So now we have a scenario where it hasn't actually been ruled as of yet, the 3-0. It has not been ruled as of yet. Everyone's expecting, based on the same rules and protocols and everything that's going down, that Juve will be basically getting a 3-0 victory. And then immediately following, there will be an appeal, no doubt, by Napoli. Now, if the roles were reversed, Napoli would have done the exact same thing to us. Not only Napoli, I would expect it from any other club in Serie A, to be honest. And, I can't see myself acting so outraged as other fans would, because I would expect it. It's the nature of the beast that is Serie A. I mean, to think that, I see some of these other platforms playing it up, like actually saying, oh, that's not the nice thing to do. Show up to the field when they can't go to are you not the nice thing to do? Serie A has never historically been rainbows and butterflies. If you are covering Serie A, you owe it to your viewers to actually follow it properly. And, there's history behind all these clubs. There's, to even think that Juve doesn't have a chip on their shoulder after 2006 would be completely naive. So, yeah, if the roles were reversed, there's no question what would happen. And honestly, it all comes down to the league. Other fans getting pissed at Juve is just bullshit, because if you want to get mad at anyone, get mad at the league that didn't postpone this. But the funny thing is, all the clubs agreed to the protocol and the rules and regulations that were put out before we got to this point. My issue, why change it now? if you're going to tell me that now we have positive cases, you're trying to prevent this from happening, you want to go into a 14-day quarantine period anytime this happens. This season will take 4 years to play out. You can't do it.
Yeah, and I agree. And just to piggyback off you said, off what you said, that if the shoe was on the other foot, and sometimes it's difficult to argue that point because no one can fill the shoes that Juve have to fill, in the sense that had they postponed this match, there would have been an argument that a week prior, other teams who had tested positive were forced to play. So why does Juventus get the benefit of the doubt and they postpone their match? And then you have the extreme polar opposite, which was the opposing team had a forfeit and we gained the points. So that's the alternative. It's either one or the other. There's no middle ground. But I would also say this, though, is that if two of Juventus's starting 11 had tested positive, I have no doubt in my mind that we call up two other players and we play the match. And that's the difference between us and some of the other clubs, is that that's just the weight that we are willing to carry, being the giants in this league, is that there would have been no excuse. We would have called up two other players and we would have played the match.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, whether it's the depth or whatever they want to call it, I honestly look at Juve's depth. I don't think it's terrifyingly deep, to be honest. Like a lot of other rival fans make it out to be and say, well, because of your resources and all this and your roster, you can afford to, but it's not fair for us. The rules have to be the same amongst all the clubs. If all of a sudden now you start changing the rules because of the resources one team has and according to another, you just, there's too much tinkering, there's too much playing around. You're absolutely right, and that was my big question to all these other rival fans. And as I'd get involved in some of this banter on Twitter and whatnot, I was saying, just answer me the simple question of what allows Napoli to be the exception. Why should they be the exception? Now, the only thing that I was fought back with was the fact that they played against Genoa. Genoa has an insane, absurd amount of COVID case running through their team. Their match was clearly postponed. Napoli had just played them 5 days prior. But Napoli's got 2 cases. And I think maybe a couple officials. So they might be sitting around 4. And they're playing it off as trying to protect Juventus and whatnot from this. But again, you can only follow the protocol the leagues put in place. So that situation is actually in that protocol. And you essentially, if you have a certain amount of players, that are able to play, that are in the negative on testing, you play. Now, of course, it does have a stipulation if the authorities, and this is where it gets crazy, because if the authorities do prevent you from doing so, then it overrides the league. However, here the big issue is basically, essentially, Agnelli and Juventus implying that De Laurentiis was pushing for the travel ban. So that's going to be the battle that takes place. But it's an absolute mess. An absolute shame, too, because this was going to be a really good game. Napoli was in great form. I kind of have to laugh because De Laurentiis should have been trying to play this match. Juve's got uncertainties. I would have felt really confident as a Napoli fan and whatnot, but playing this safety of Juventus and their players off, like a lot of rival fans are, De Laurentiis, he had it. And he was still out whining and dining. Now reports break out that their players, even after testing positive, didn't go into confinement. The whole thing's a mess, man. It's an absolute.
I think from our perspective, I thought we handled this step by step the right way. And I know that the biggest part of what caused controversy from today, depending on what side you're on and which platform you decided to follow was the fact that Juventus still wanted to show up and be on the pitch. I personally, I feel like they have an obligation. There were fans in the stands. How they decide to react to a situation is how Juventus wants to react to it. It has nothing to do with Napoli. I also thought that they went above and beyond because there was still a very, very small percentage that Napoli was going to somehow show up. So why not put yourself in a position that if they do, you're prepared for it? So I thought from start to finish, our club kind of handled this better in the sense that I think this is the first forfeit with COVID, and I thought that they gave Napoli every opportunity to, if you want to show up, we'll play. Hence, part of the reason why I feel like they went to the stadium and they were going to stand on the pitch. But that's my personal opinion. I know other people probably feel completely differently about it, but it's only it only seems to be by people who might actually be threatened by Juventus and the fact that we just gained 3 points. I don't think you're going to hear many complaints out of Atalanta. I don't think you're going to hear many complaints out of Parma, clubs like that. It's only the ones that might be actually in a running to threaten us.
Yeah. Now, that situation I told you about Genoa and all that, and these Napoli fans playing it off as trying to protect Juve and whatnot. What's your reaction to that when you try and say that? I'm not buying it
I
for a
don't,
second, but
I don't think you can, based on the information that they didn't follow their own protocol. So if you want to talk about it, that's fine, but you'd be a hypocrite to do so when your own players didn't follow the standard operating procedures for this exact
when your own
protocol.
president didn't follow protocol or anything and was vocal about continuing to go out in public and do this after it's the whole thing's it's kind of comical. It kind of really is. Serie A, the league, like in this, I thought should have got on top of it a lot sooner. There was quite a gap in time before they actually came out and said, no, this match is happening and whatnot. How do you think this looks to an outsider, maybe a neutral of the league or whatnot, or someone that just kind of looks at it from the outside? How does this reflect Serie A, do you think, how it played out?
I don't think it makes us look any worse than what the narrative of Serie A already is to some folks. I believe fans of other leagues like La Liga or Bundesliga probably are a lot more understanding of it as opposed to our Premier League friends who probably feel like this show must go on and it's kind of a circus at Serie A. But things like that, I mean, it's a tough question for me to answer because I don't pay attention to stuff like that. I don't pay no mind to it. So this entire situation is rather unprecedented. So it's hard to even really kind of generate a thought about it because how would anybody handle a situation that's never happened before?
Yeah. And again, I don't know. The more it goes on, the more I can't help but just feel ADL wanted Insignia, Zelensky in there in what's a big match. So it's hard to look at it in any other way, really, once it started to break down. But see what develops. I still put out a question for Juventini out there just to see what their comments were, how they felt, whatnot. And James Martino already said, what's your opinion of Juve's stand? Did they do the right thing? Also, is this also a sign of how unpredictable this season will be? One positive test could wipe a team out for 2 weeks with only one allowed reschedule. So for those that don't know, in those protocols, it's stated that you are able to postpone one match. After that, you will lose by default. Like you have to essentially field teams, call up guys, do whatever you want. So my opinion on Juve's stand, Again, granted, the circumstances and how the story was always evolving, if those authorities did in fact stop the traveling, I would fully expect that the league would have shut things down properly and accordingly. But Juve's stand, if the league says the game's on, they're doing the right thing. They have to. And that's my stand. Eric, anything different?
I would agree. Just to reiterate what I said, I felt that Juventus did their part in giving Napoli every opportunity to be there to play the match. I also believe, because there was controversy in whether or not that it was the travel ban was something that the club was behind versus something the league was behind, is another reason why I felt that the league kind of left the door open for them to either be there or not. So I thought they did
Yeah.
the right thing.
As far as his follow up question with, is this a sign of how unpredictable a season will be? I mean, yeah, it's unprecedented to have to go through a season facing these scenarios. Teams facing losing their key guys, not due to injury or anything, but testing positive for COVID. It's completely unprecedented, but it's either you do it and follow the rules, or you just shut the season down and don't even attempt to. So when we think about these and these scenarios and these circumstances, rival fans got to ask themselves, what do you want to do? Do you want to even play the league? Does the team bow out? You know, if you feel that strongly about it, maybe Napoli should bow out and just say, yeah, you know what? If this is how it's going to be, like, we're not into it, whatnot. Because if you're really that concerned about the safety and keeping other guys safe, you'd have a hell of a moral stance about more than just wanting to postpone one match. And why haven't you had such a moral stance when it's happening to the other clubs around you? You agreed to these protocols. It's just, yeah. Is it a sign of how unpredictable? Of course, this season is going to be unpredictable. It's going to be a gong show, really. We haven't felt the effects since the first outbreak in last season, trying to wrap up and whatnot. But our guys came back. Everybody was good, healthy for the restart. But knock on wood, been okay so far. But I go back to what you said earlier, and I totally feel that, yeah, that happens to us. We call a couple guys up, and the show goes on. You know, it's just outlooks, and I think a lot of that comes down to the personality. De Laurentiis is an absolute toilet, and that's just the way it is. The guy's a joke. He's a clown, in my opinion, and he's got that mentality. And yeah, great. You dug Napoli up from the gutters, but what have you done since? Like, you're actually small time in the grand scheme of things, and he has a loser mentality. And that's why when the speculation comes out of this, it's easy. It is so easy to believe that he tried to manipulate these guys into making this ban happen for him to his benefit. But yeah, the unpredictability, of course, always going to be there. Peter writes it. Assuming an appeal is a certainty, what do you expect the final outcome will be? He's got a follow-up question too, but we're going to focus on the appeal. This is, again, not knowing, as Eric said, what's real, what's not. It's going to be really hard to say what I expect the appeal to be. It comes down to whether or not, how far are they going to dig into this ASL ban being legitimate, or De Laurentiis getting his buddy to pull a favor to him, right? Not only that, but I don't know. Other factors. What's the protocol on, okay, if these guys have to be set aside, do they have to call up youth to play, like, and play? Like, do they have to find other players? Like, I don't know. Or is it just this set roster list? If these guys are unavailable, that's it. You're done. I don't really know. It's hard to say what's going to come out of an appeal. Because again, the only thing that can override the league is one of these health authorities. And that's the only thing in question. I think the same as if you were going to make an exception for Napoli, I think if this appeal goes through and all of a sudden this changes, I think you create the same havoc as if you were to impose that postponement from the league from the get-go. I think you open up the same can of worms with the other clubs. What do you think, Eric?
I, I would agree to that. I think with the decision on this, I think they're going to have to make Napoli an example. And that's the unfortunate part for some of their players and some of their staff, because they're having to deal with the consequences of some of their club members not following what the protocol is. So, and because of that, I think they're going to be forced to forfeit the match. And I think the league is going to have to use this entire situation as an example. And I also believe that as they dig more and more, they may find out that things weren't as they seem to be. So maybe Aurelio doesn't want them to dig deeper and deeper into it, and he might actually, he might accept the 3-0 forfeit, because if they find out that he was behind it, it doesn't, what's that look like on Napoli? So this is going to have to be used as an example for other clubs, because I also feel like you can't allow them to appeal this and pass, because then Genoa is going to want to appeal their match that they just got slaughtered by Napoli when their players had COVID, or Calgary and their players having it. Like if they get the appeal, that in itself, I believe, is going to cause more controversy for other clubs than allowing this to just move forward.
I agree. Um, moving on, our friend Z says, are they afraid to play because Insignia is injured and Zielinski tested positive and they just lack the quality backup? I think so. Absolutely.
If I know, I'll say this: if I know anything about Reno, he would have fielded 11 men, because that's just the type of man that he is. I don't think it had anything to do with the manager or the players. So unfortunately, it wasn't a matter of if they were afraid. I think Aurelio was.
Yeah, and this is why I posted this comment on Twitter yesterday, and I put the funny thing about it all, again, alluding to what I spoke on earlier. They should have the confidence to go in there and take it to us. We have not found our footing under Pirlo. He hasn't had the benefit of a preseason. We haven't beaten Napoli since Gattuso's been at the helm. They have that for them too, and they're just playing good football. These two guys being out, two of their more key guys, but De Laurentiis stepping in here and doing this, it's almost just a mind fuck that he's done on his own club. Like, really, the league says you're playing. I'm with you. I think Gattuso would be the guy that says, yeah, no, we go there. We call up these other guys, or we use these other guys, and we play. We fight. I don't know. The whole thing's strange. You're right, though. I don't see it being anything from the players or coach's side for sure. But again, we've said that. De Laurentiis just playing games, really. Some of the other comments, most popular comment, was this Juan Cuadrado's best performance?
Who said that? He was a real handsome guy.
Well, there's you and there's a couple others. Yeah, that's as funny. I had to laugh, but this kind of ties into Peter's follow-up question, which was, should we be worried that Cuadrado was again listed on the left side in a fictional lineup today? I don't know, because I'm thinking that he probably put his lineup out with the anticipation that they would show up because it was an uncertainty. You know what I mean? So thinking he put his lineup out there. He had Kulusevski on the right again and Quadrado on the left. The back line was the same with Danilo, Bonucci, Chiellini. In the middle, Arthur and Bentancur, who were slotted in a couple days ago, saying that they would be starting, which was great. And the return of Dybala with Ronaldo up top. I loved it all. I will not get behind Quadrado on the left. He's makeshift as it is on the right. Kulusevski is out of position as a wing back. It's not for him. We saw that clear as day against Roma. I am a little unsettled, I guess, by seeing that. I would like to think Pirlo, and his history and who he is and his knowledge of the game and whatnot, wouldn't go back to that. And one of the things I've heard from some Juventini is saying that he's sticking it to the club because of his options. So he's doing this almost out of spite. And I don't know if I can get behind that. It's a really weird one to think he was purposely not playing De Sciglio to show the manager that he needs true wing back. So he's moving Quadrado over there, whatnot. But I don't know. I thought it was a risky thing to do against Roma. Okay. You played good against Sampdoria. You had your lineup decent. Frabotta did very, very well. I thought take it the same into Roma because it's a tough opponent. It's a tricky away fixture. Why make the changes to try there? I get it. He didn't get a preseason. But was that really the matchup to try it? And now I am a little concerned seeing the lineup here again. What do you think about that? And what do you think about these fans saying that maybe he's just trying to show the club what they needed to give him or stuff like that? I can't get behind that.
First and foremost, I would never speak for Pirlo, and especially make a claim like that. This is a first-time coach, a player who bleeds black and white. I can't imagine with the relationship that he has with this club that he would be doing anything out of spite in his third professional match. That is almost unfathomable.
Exactly. It's just also, yeah, that's a great point and something that allows me not to get behind that. It's way too fresh into his tenure to be sticking it to I can't get behind that.
And we don't even know what it is that he's trying to stick it to. And the reason for that is when this lineup originally came out, my first thought was it's a fictional lineup for a game that we're 99.99% sure is not going to happen. So there's no reason stressing over it. Number two, let's say the game did happen and he did follow through with that particular lineup. I'm not going to crucify him on his third match. Juan Cuadrado did not work against Roma, but how many matches previously did players not work for their positions, but were just continued to be forced in that position? If it didn't work one match, we don't know what his plan is, what his strategy is. We don't know how he plans on using them. And right now, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in terms of just allowing him to tinker and experiment and do what he needs to do in order to truly understand the players that he has. So if he put Juan back on the left, my thought is maybe it didn't work against Roma, but maybe he made some small tweaks that's going to allow it to work. So I'm going to allow that. I'm going to see that happen. Now, is Juan better than Frabotta? Probably not. But I think he has to field 11 players that have experience on the pitch.
Yeah, I get that. It's just I don't know if it was too soon to tinker after you had a good showing against Samp. I think you wait.
He's got no choice. He's got, this is something that has to happen within the first quarter of your season, because when we start getting in November, December, January, and we start getting the ball rolling, he's going to have players as comfortable as possible. And so, unfortunately, we're going to have to be in some pretty uncomfortable positions early on to figure out what we got.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed feelings on it, and I guess the reason would be that Cuadrado is makeshift as it is on the right, and he struggles a lot of the time on the right as it is. To throw him on the left when you've got a perfectly fine option in Frabotta, regardless of what you think of De Chilio, he'd be more comfortable there. And honestly, I mean, I don't know the tinkering because once Sandro comes back, he's going to be there anyway. So then you actually have two left sided guys in Sandro and Frabotta. You've got Danilo who could cover on both sides should he need to be. And you have Demiral who's healthy, who could actually play as one of those three center backs to get Danilo out there. I just think it's kind of a crazy. It's just a strange tinkering to do. I saw it more as unnecessary, and especially against like Roma is just notoriously a tricky away fixture for us. I don't know. I get it that he's got to do it earlier on, but when you've got these matches with Napoli, Roma on back-to-backs before an international break, I don't know. I get your reasoning too, because you don't want to wait too long and start messing around. But I also look at the other guys that are on the lineup, and it's not going to be something you're going to set and lock into. So I probably I felt fine having more faith in Frabotta starting against Roma than I did swapping Quad to the left. And I honestly thought when I saw that lineup against Roma that it was going to play out as a 4-2-3-1. So I was especially surprised when Quad hit the left. It's strange. To speak to his, should we be worried? No, because of the guys that are like I said, once Sandro comes back, that's kind of my biggest curiosity right now is will he regain the form he once had under this 3-5-2 when he first kind of hit the scene with us. I'm really going to have eyes more so than ever on Sandro to see if he can regain that. I expect Frabotta to put him under pressure. I'd hope competition at that spot. And when we talk about Cuadrado on the right, obviously there's a lot of talk about Bernardeschi being used as a wingback. But same as Cuadrado going to the left, opposite side foot for Bernardeschi on the right. But honestly, I would give that a go. And I'd be fine with him trying it out on the right. I think Bernardeschi, when I see him with more space ahead of him, I see him doing very, very well, especially when he was filling in midfield roles. I could see him playing wing back, honestly, on either side. I don't care that he's left-footed. I think he could actually do it on both sides. And this is just, I know we got to wait for him to get healthy. You're the Bernardeschi expert when it comes to the Juvecast. What's his time frame, buddy? When's he coming back?
Yes, I've been trying to throw some feelers out there left and right and no response. I thought the original return date was actually going to be this weekend based on his injury. So I think he's actually working towards getting back on the pitch. Obviously, he didn't get called up, so he's got 2 weeks. So to be honest with you, I think he'll be in rotation in the next match.
Well, there you go. If he gets in there, I'm curious to see him in the setup under Pirlo. I think he could honestly excel with what Pirlo's trying to accomplish and the style of play and his characteristics. It could be good for him, but we'll see. Obviously, kicker, it appears Chiesa is going to be joining Juve. So as we were waiting for this non-existent match, because Napoli are clowns, Costa apparently has locked in a dry loan deal heading to Bayern. If this materializes and gets finalized, this opens the door for Federico Chiesa to finally get finalized and come to Juve. It appears that's going to be, this is how the shape of this transfer would work. You'd be looking at a 2-year loan with option / obligation to buy. So first year, 2 million euros loan. Second year, 8 million euro loan. After that, the stipulations that would lock it in as an obligation to buy are as follows. One of these three need to be hit. Juve reaches top four. 60% of appearances Chiesa makes, he plays 30 minutes minimum in. Or he reaches 10 goals and 10 assists. With the first one alone, you've got to expect its obligation. I can't see Juve not reaching top four in the next coming years. So I would expect that's a lock. So essentially it makes it a 50 million euro purchase of Chiesa. I like Chiesa as a player. I like his characteristics. I like his traits. I like the way he plays. At the end of the day, this is a bit better because you're stretching that payment out until that third year, but still 50 million euro for Chiesa, who apparently is going to come in and play right wing back. So my issue then becomes, we have a makeshift right wing back as it stands who is actually a forward, and we are committing to this for another makeshift right wing back. Does it have that feel like previous seasons where Juve's kind of left that one hole in the squad to you, Eric?
Oh, of course, but that's to be expected. That just seems to be how we do business. We feel they probably left a hole in the squad. They probably feel like they filled it with the signing or the loaning of McKinney. I was pretty adamant about. I didn't have an issue with them signing McKinney. I had an issue with the timing of signing McKinney or loaning him. But because I felt like we still have such a hole in our midfield, at least like one player off, but then obviously with our right back. So, but to me, this Chiesa deal, it almost feels like that's going to be Juan's replacement. So I feel like Juan's probably going to be out the door because they're going to be utilized the same way, but you go a lot younger. The amount of money that we're going to be paying for Chiesa, I don't know if we can justify. So he's not going to play on the left. With Kulishevsky also being added into our roster, it's just I think Juan is going to find it hard to have a place in the squad. So I think that's why they did it the way they did.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of why, this strange. I mean, obviously Cuadrado's getting up there. I think he's 31, 32 maybe. He's up there. When it comes to utility guys, though, he's useful in that sense. He's definitely not the answer at right wing back. But again, if Chiesa's coming in to do that, I don't know. I've got it's the same elements of the game. It's the game in the middle of the park, and it's the defensive duties that I just can't wrap my head around Chiesa being an effective right wing back.
Well, when you have a guy, I don't think it's going to be Danilo for very long. But when you have a right center back, that's either going to be Demiral or Matthias de Ligt, kind of covering for you, it offers you a little bit more freedom in the attacking phase. And I think that is kind of what Pirlo's going for. Is he's willing to sacrifice a little bit more of an attacking wing back because he knows he's got some coverage back there in the defensive back three if we continue with this formation.
Yeah. The thing with Danilo too is actually, I think he's been 5 times better as a right center back than he has a fullback on either side. And it speaks a lot to the fact that Demiral's healthy and Pirlo's playing him. And I think it has a lot to do with what Pirlo wants out of the ball movement and playing it. I think Demiral, honestly, he's going to get in the lineup when Chiellini's not in there. Again, Pirlo's got and if anybody has read his thesis, a high emphasis on how the ball's played and the movement and that ability is like, we're talking right down to the goalkeeper. And we've seen Chesney's requirements so far step up big time as far as what's going to be needed from him. And that's a big question mark too, whether he can fulfill that need that Pirlo has. But I think Danilo's, man, I think he's locking himself in there for Pirlo. I think once De Ligt gets back, same thing. You'll probably get a rotation. Like those will be your aggressors. You might get into a scenario where you see Bonucci sitting, and then you can get both Demiral, De Ligt in there. But I think like one of those guys is always going to have to be there on one of those sides that can move the ball, like Danilo. He's actually done very, very well there. Even interceptions, like everything. Like he looks 5 times the player. But yeah, I mean, those wingbacks are still, I get it. He's willing to sacrifice a bit more because he's got the 3 in the back and he's playing a high line and whatnot. But yeah, I just still can't wrap my head around that commitment for the makeshift. I mean, you've got guys we could have probably went after and achieved a similar deal that actually play that position. That's the part that I can't really wrap my head around. They are just so gung-ho on Chiesa and have been for the past, it's been 2 seasons now that we've been linked with him, right? And that was back when we were playing the 4-3-3 and they wanted him in as a winger. I was all for it, but not at the money. It's always been the money. Here now as a makeshift, man, I don't know. I feel like there could be other guys we could have went after or done similar type deals. Obviously, it stems from Costa, that transfer getting deal. And then, of course, we have everybody's favorite, Khedira. I want to ask you this question in regards to this whole Khedira thing. Is he, because you have this divide, and it's so funny because, like, the fans that say he's completely obligated to do what he's doing and he's in the right because it's the team's fault. He's owed that money. He's doing the right thing. I'm under the stance that these are not working stiffs like you and I, okay? And I see it a little bit differently because I don't see him as fulfilling his side of the contract for a couple seasons now, especially when you factor in injuries and still collecting the pay. The fact that now we say, you know what, we want to go our separate ways and he's playing this game pisses me right off. And I don't think he's in the right, especially the fact that they've tried to negotiate a lower price. What's wrong with that? He could still go somewhere and play. He's pissing me off, man. And I don't think he's in the right. But I got to hear it from you because I know you don't hold back. And I think, yeah, I got to hear from you, Eric.
Well, I'll say this. There's a difference between being right and not being wrong. And he's not wrong with wanting his severance pay, but at the same time, you kind of just have to accept what is. And over the course of the last 3 seasons, what is that you have not fulfilled your end of the bargain, basically what you've been saying. You have not, been contractually obligated to, and you've not fulfilled those things that you basically signed a contract that said that you were going to do. And in doing so, there are consequences. So we are poor businessmen in terms of selling anyway. So at this point in time, we already swallowed 18 million for Gonzalo. Swallow whatever you owe Sammy and tell him to fuck off. Because what are you going to do? You're going to pay him either way. You're either going to pay him to sit in your stands, or you can pay him to pack his bags, clear his locker room, and make a spot for someone who's actually going to do something. So if you're going to pay him either way, then terminate his contract with his pay.
Yeah. That's the thing. And I think they're just going to have to bite the bullet and do that. It's just the frustrating part is when you hear the fucking clown talk about his love for the club and wanting to, find his role and show this and that. It's not happening, and it's just lies. Like, stop playing the game. Stop saying shit like that. Just take it for what it is and say, yeah, you know what? They've told me that I'm not in their plans. I just want my severance. Call it for what it is. Stop feeding lies and whatnot and trying to save face. It's just it's ridiculous. As we wrap up, Eric, as we touched on the questions and kind of covered that whole Napoli debacle as best as possible, I want to talk about the team as a whole, and we've only had such a small body of work that we can really go on. But how do you feel in the small body of work we have of Pirlo? What do you think? What do you like? What don't you like? And how do you think Juve will finish this season? As a lot of um, journalists, commentators, fans have written Juve off from winning the Scudetto already. Let's get your thoughts on that as we wrap up.
I think they'd be right to do so. I mean, you have squads with managers that have years and years of experience who've won trophies. I mean, it's any betting man would probably have done that. So I can't blame journalists for saying, you know what, this year is just not Juve's year. And I pay no mind to that, because every year for the last three years or so, they've always, kind of started to write us off as other teams got stronger. So things like that don't bother me. In terms of just our body of work, I visualized and I watched his thesis because that's just how I am. I'm a visual person, and I think in terms of body of work, there's most definitely an identity, and that's something that we as a club have lacked over the last 3 to 4 seasons, to be honest with you, is an identity of what we want to do and how we want to do it. And I think we have that direction. It's fine tuning things. And one thing that I really enjoy about what his philosophies are is that he makes it very difficult for opponents to key in on any one person because you get so many people involved and on the ball. And my personal opinion is I think that Pirlo came in here and I think he's completely scrapped this idea of a regista. And he goes, I don't need one person controlling the tempo or anything else. I need everybody doing it. So I feel like there's a lot of fluidity in what we're doing. It keeps opponents guessing. We switch field all the time now. I think we switched field 7-8 times against Sampdoria, which has been double what we almost did all of last season. There's a lot of positives. It's just fine-tuning, and I'm okay with that, because if we are that ahead already and it's just a matter of fine-tuning those things, I think at the very end, personal opinion was that I think we'll be there. I don't know where there is, but I think we'll be there. Last season I was rather convinced that we weren't going to win the Scudetto because I thought that Sarri was a fucking idiot, and I thought that he was going to lose us the Scudetto. But with Pirlo and his football IQ, his intelligence, his ability to maximize talent in players, and understand just the fluidity of the games, I think that plays in our advantage. And I'll also say this, is that I was surprised by Roma, because as long as Pirlo is our manager, nobody has a way to game plan for us because they have nothing to go off of. So I think we're going to find a lot of success early because teams aren't going to know necessarily how to game plan for our style of play because it's so new. So I think we have the advantage of of a surprise, or the advantage of not knowing, and only we know how we're going to play. So I like where we're at. I like what we've done so far. Once again, I'm a results guy, so if the worst thing that happened, we walked away with a point from Roma, I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a lot of good things, and everyone who follows the podcast knows how long I've said maybe we just scrap this goddamn Regista thing, because it wasn't working. And that was one of the things. Yeah, and I've touched on the pod earlier. I liked that he was doing that. I do like that, even though I question his timing right now at trying things, I like that he's got the balls to kind of stand for something or whatnot, what he believes will work. He's not scared to try things. I like that the way he has us set up, even though we haven't really had to see it yet put to action, it allows us for easy transitions into other setups or whatnot, and able to adapt to a game. We haven't had to see that just yet. You could argue Roma would have called for some adjustments being made and whatnot, but oddly enough, when we went down a man, we actually played much, much better in that game. I still have faith in Pirlo. As far as everybody that's counting us out of the gate, I don't really care. I actually like that. I prefer that. When you add that to the unknown that you speak of with Pirlo, and that, people aren't going to have him figured out because you just don't know yet. We don't even know yet. So that's the whole thing. I like it. The Mercado, obviously wrapping up, probably going to finalize this Chiesa thing, this Costa thing. As a whole, as we wrap up here, success, okay, or not that great at all? What do you think?
That's determined by what you consider successes versus failure. In terms of finances, it was an absolute failure. We didn't sell anybody but Rugani, and we got $1.5 million for him. Everybody else we loaned out. So to me, that's 50% of your Mercado.
That's a loan as well, by the way.
So 1.5 million. We sold nobody, and we have 2 terminations, and we tried to sell or terminate Sammy's, and we're still working on that. So I think, to be honest with you, if I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, taking that into consideration, as well as the players that we brought in, to be honest with you, I'd put it at a 6.5, because financially we are so strapped that our one and only goal, to me, should have been being able to sell. We have to sell. And this has just been something that we've been fighting for years. So yes, there's a pandemic. Yes, it's not an easy time to buy, but there are clubs that are purchasing players. You just did not make them look well enough and persuade them enough to buy our players. So I'm not happy with it based on finances, because I think next year we're going to be reaping what we sowed for not being able to sell anybody this year.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at it, the Mercado, it was always going to be a tough one to make the sales. Unprecedented times. Again, it's affecting every aspect. Those guys, we just had to take hits. I don't think you could have risked taking them on again. We had to free up the salary space as well to attempt to make the team a bit better, which I actually do feel we did on the roster. I thought the Arthur piece of business was fantastic. I like the McKinney deal. I would not have sent out Pellegrini. This Chiesa thing, I'm a little humming and hawing on, but Kulishevsky was a good addition. All in all, I think on paper the team's better. Financially, yeah, we've got some hardships. And I mean, these loans, shit, if Costa takes another injury, God forbid, gets hurt again or whatnot, and then the book's really out on him, we're stuck, we're locked. Very, very disappointed they couldn't get, one sale out of some of these guys. So the financial aspect of it, that's tough. We got a big mountain to climb there. On the pitch, though, I did like it, and I do feel we improved. So for that, I think you're at it's funny because on the pitch, I think it's about a 7.5 Mercado. Financially, it's like a 2. It's like a 2 or 1. Like, it's awful. So it averages out to make somewhere around 5 or 6 for Mercado. it is what it is, like 4.55 if you're to split it up. But yeah, time will tell too. We'll see what ends up happening. But we are shocking at selling. Holy fuck. It is unbelievable. But yeah, we'll see what everybody thinks. Love to hear the comments from you and Teeny, see what you think about the Mercado, how it wraps up, and what your thoughts are. But yeah, as always, Eric, it's been a pleasure. We didn't get a game to recap, which absolutely sucks, but there's many games coming up, and you and I have already discussed we'll get you on for a match, probably a couple throughout the season. And you and I, we're no strangers to the pop-ups now and then when we just got a vent, so we'll definitely make that happen. Juventini, I hope you enjoyed the match today. It was probably the most relaxing one of Juve I've ever watched in my life. So I hope you all got to enjoy that. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. We'll obviously be in touch at the next match that obviously we anticipate actually taking place. Eric, thanks again. As always, until next time, Forza Juve, Fino alla fine. To the Napoli fans, ciao.